I'd like to share with you some extremely important ideas, and these ideas could be laid out at length over one or more books, but I want to condense them down and give them to you early to see just how much you can get out of them now. So for those with eyes to see and ears to hear, here we go. In life, we are in this process where God gives us more. And there are different ways used in the scriptures to describe this. And what that looks like is also highly variable. Sometimes it's described in scriptural language as that which cometh from above. There's an example. Or that which cometh down from heaven. This could be in the form of a change to your circumstances, your situation, a revealed change in someone you know, a new person, a new place, a new job, some shift in the information, a change in your beliefs, some event or experience that's new or that conveys new information. All of these things, some challenge, some new challenge, a new question you have, a problem that has become evident to you that's new, some new suffering, some new affliction, a change in any of these things, that and much more could be classified as this injection, this thing that comes from above. Now, one thing to take away right away from this is that very few of those things will be recognized by most people as something from God. And yet, all of it is. All of creation is from Him. It's all designed for a specific purpose. And what is that purpose? To help us to learn more about God and to be more like Him, and give us the choice to do that, the opportunity to do that according to our own desires and efforts. So what happens is, as this new information comes and becomes evident in our lives, it creates an opportunity. And that opportunity is one of response. We get to decide what we will do in response to what has been revealed to us. And again, it's this enormous envelope of things that are possible changes. And now we get to decide what we will do. And again, just to shed more light on this, it could be big, it could be little, it could seem big and actually be small, it could seem small and actually be huge. It could be someone bumping up against you on a street, right? It could be losing your wallet. It could be losing your keys. Or it could be something as huge as suddenly losing someone that you love. Or having some other tremendous experience where now all at once, everything you ever believed about God is in question. It doesn't matter how big or small it is, it's the same exact pattern. Something is injected into your life and now you get to respond. You get to respond to some kind of new information. Now, I want to share with you a scripture here, and I'm going to read it and then we're going to talk about it. This is from Luke 8:18. Jesus says, "Take heed therefore how ye hear, for whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken, even that which he seemeth to have." This is an unnecessarily perplexing scripture. What it is meant to say is supposed to be very clear. But because of poor translation, here we are, and it's this cryptic, mystic thing. One of the questions this verse answers is, how does our response to new information matter? Why does our response to new information matter? All of the time, God is testing us. He's probing us. He's giving us the opportunity to show what we want. Now, if you ask someone, what do you want? That's a pretty open-ended question, and it's a low-cost question. someone could say anything, and it doesn't really matter how truthful it is in terms of what they actually desire, or more importantly, in terms of what they're willing to do about it. If you really want something, if someone asks you, what do you want more than anything else? That's not a light question, because to be honest would require you to orient your entire life, to sort your entire life, so that that thing, whatever you say you want the most, whatever it is, becomes your top priority at all times and in all places. And very, very few people have that kind of honesty or that kind of commitment to say, yes, they don't have that desire. There really isn't anything that they want more than anything. And for that reason, they hardly get anything that they want, because more often than not, our desires compete with one another. They are mutually exclusive, meaning to pursue one thing is to not pursue everything else. So some things play along nicely together, but even in those cases, if you dig deep enough, you'll see that at some point you have to have a prioritization. You can't get around it. That's one reason I wrote the book, Joy on Purpose. I highly recommend that you study that book. Anyway, this verse answers the question of what happens when we respond poorly. And it also tells us why it's so important to respond well to this new information that I talked about. When an egg is fertilized, all at once, this pre-existing thing, the egg, it changes. It changes completely. And everything that was in it before is now different. And it all happened because something was injected and it just changed everything. The new information that's constantly revealed to us in every moment of our lives, basically, it's supposed to be having much greater conscious effects than it does in your life, because you're just kind of swimming through passively, not noticing these changes. And then when you get access to this information, you're not really doing much with it. You're very slow to react to it. And that's harming God's ability to lead you to better things. Now I'm employing some scriptural phrases here. Being quick to observe, or being instant in season, out of season. These are non-negotiable qualities for those that desire to accept more of God's blessings into their lives. So back to this verse, this unnecessarily cryptic verse. Here's a rephrasing of it. Therefore, take great care in how you respond, for everyone will be given whatever they are willing to receive. But from those not willing to receive will be taken even what they seem to have. As the new information is injected in, you have a choice. Do you ignore it or delay response, which is basically the same? Or do you change because of it? And if you change, how do you change? How close are you to how God would change if he were in your position? And that answers whether you're measuring up to what he offers to you, if you're willing to receive the good that he grants you or not. Now, if you reject it or ignore it or delay it, which are all pretty much the same, what happens is you don't stay the same. In life, there is no stay the same. It's not on the menu of options. And any time you're tricked into thinking that that's one of the options, really what's happening is you're being led to something worse. The scriptural phrase is led down to hell. You're being led towards less, towards worse, and less than you had before. Because that injection is a wedge. It splits what was before into two parts. One is that which can ascend, and one is that which cannot ascend. And by choosing to, in your mind, what you think is stay the same, you're actually choosing to descend. You're tethering yourself to an anchor, which will prevent you from going up as that part of what you had before goes down. If you want to get the most out of life, you have to pay attention to these wedge events, or the wedge information, that which cometh from above. God makes a difference. I don't mean like, hey, make a difference. Give money to poor people, make a difference. That's not what I mean. I mean, he changes what is, and what is seen as one thing, he changes it into two things. And one chunk of that is worse than what you thought, and one chunk of that is better than what you thought. What he injects is part of that, and so it will be sorted up or down, right? But everything else has to be sorted as well. What you'll find is that in your life, and maybe it's easier to think about other people with this first, because we have this filter, this natural filter that blocks us from seeing things that maybe we're not doing as well as we could. So think about it in terms of someone else. So for once, I'm encouraging you to judge someone else, even if you haven't repented of your sins yet. But we're just doing this temporarily, and then you're going to erase it from your mind. So think of someone else, and think of something that has happened in their life. It might be an ongoing thing, or of information that they've gained through some fashion. Some new person has come into their lives. Some person who was in their life starts acting differently. Someone gets sick. It doesn't matter, whatever the thing is. Did they respond as well as they could have? Did they extract from that all the lessons they could have and applied them across their lives? The answer is almost surely no, because these kinds of people are excruciatingly rare. But what can you learn from that? Think about that person and start listing off the misery in their life that has resulted from their insufficient response to some catalyst. Now you start to see how this works. You start to see, maybe you even have some details of what they lost as a result that they thought that they had before. Let's go through a real world example. Maybe, and hopefully this person's not you, but maybe there's a person in your life who seemed to be happily married. They seemed to have a happy marriage, but something happened. And let's say in this case, it's the other person who's at fault. And that other person, the person that they're married to, went off the deep end and did something crazy. Or they found out, the first spouse found out that the person they were married to had actually been doing something very bad for a long time. Now, it turns out that they didn't have what they thought they had. In this case, we're tempted to think, well, something has changed. In the case that the person was doing the secret thing all along, the only thing that changed was your awareness of it. That's the same exact person that they were before you knew. In the case that the person makes a new decision, still, technically, they were that person. You just didn't know yet. John talks about this in one of his letters. He says something like, they that went out from us were never really with us. But you don't know until later, right? But you thought you had something that you didn't actually have. Now, does that mean that a happy marriage doesn't exist? No, it's totally possible still. And then you say, well, does it mean that I can't have one if you're the person who found out these things about your spouse? No, maybe that exists in the future for you too, and maybe not. But the point is that you thought you had something that it turns out you don't have. And whether you can get it or not in this life, the fact is that you're not going to have it if you don't change something. Now, that doesn't mean that you should leave that spouse. We don't even have to go into that level of detail in this example. There are things you could do to help your spouse be a better person. There are things you could do to find a better spouse if that's not what you want to do, or if you've tried that and it doesn't work out. There are all sorts of things you could do with all sorts of different outcomes that are possible, but the point is, none of them will be yours if you ignore what you've learned. None of them will be yours if you don't respond to what you've learned. Do you see how now you have to resort everything? You have to look back in your mind and say, all right, of all my memories with this person, which ones were real? And which ones were just them pulling the wool over my eyes? And there are probably some things in there that are good. And there are surely some things in there that aren't. But you thought they were, but they're not. You see how this works? You can and must apply this pattern to every aspect of your life. If you're working a job and it seems solid, you've been working it for 12 years, and all of a sudden your boss or your boss's boss starts talking about things, could be a multitude of things, that indicate that maybe your job is not so secure, or maybe the company is not so secure. Whatever the case may be, maybe you should start looking for another job. At a minimum, you should not feel secure in that job anymore. To do anything less than that would be very dishonest. And what does it do? It puts you in a worse place than you were before. You thought you had this solid job. That's now off the table. The question is, what are you going to do about it? At a minimum, you have to recognize that you don't have what you thought you had. And we could go through this again and again. A really important example is religion. You know, I've used the monkey bar analogy before. Suppose you're crossing a set of monkey bars and you want something more. Well, you can reach as far as you want to the next thing, the next bar, or maybe you have long arms, you can reach the bar after that. But it doesn't matter what kind of simian attributes you might have, you will not be able to reach the end of the monkey bars until you let go of the one that you're grabbing. That's the anchor. The new information in this case is, hey, I'm not at the end of the monkey bars, and I want to go further than I am. I'm not satisfied with what I have. I want more. I want better. There will absolutely be things that you have to let go of in order to proceed. Now, there will also be good things that you get to take with you. It's almost never the case that there's something that is absolutely, completely, 100%, quote unquote, bad. There are elements of good in almost all things. But there are also elements of evil in almost all things. And God makes a difference. Part of the purpose of life is to learn to discern good and evil. And that's not God training us to be some sort of, well, again, a monkey, we're talking about monkey bars, who puts everything into one jar that says good and one jar that says bad. We have to have a higher level of discretion than this. We have to grade things on a gradient, on a continuum, and understand the relationship between things. And I've spoken about this a lot, okay? I'm just trying to fold it into this other topic. You have to make a difference between things. As new information comes, you have to change how you saw things before and what you did before and how you felt about it before. And if you're not willing to do that, you will be stuck, not where you are. That would be okay compared to the truth. It's still not as good as the alternative, which is to receive more of what God has to give you. But it's worse than that. You will not stay where you are. You will absolutely have something worse than you do. You can't stay the same. You have to respond to new information by recoding how you see value in your life, how you see truth in your life, how you see beauty, good, all of these things. And so many people right now are in this situation where they will not discriminate using the new information that they've received. The time is far spent to learn to respond to these things. It's really important that you learn to do this and that you pick up the pace in how you respond to new information from God. Much more is coming, and you will not receive it if you haven't let go of what you already know prevents you from ascending.